Princess Anne's secret decision leaves King Charles speechless. What if? The letter no one was meant to read. The letter was never supposed to exist. There was no royal seal, no official signature, no palace record acknowledging it had ever been written. Yet, just before sunrise, an unmarked envelope quietly arrived at Windsor Castle. It wasn't addressed to King Charles, it wasn't meant for Prince William, and it certainly wasn't intended for Queen Camilla. Instead, only one handwritten name appeared across the front: Princess Anne. For more than 70 years, Anne had lived by one simple principle: duty before recognition. She had never chased headlines, never asked for applause, and never expected history to remember her. But on this quiet morning, history appeared to have chosen her anyway, because hidden inside that ordinary envelope was a message capable of changing everything the royal family believed about its future. And before the day was over, King Charles would hear words that would leave him completely speechless. The first light of morning slowly spread across Windsor Castle. Outside, visitors gathered near the gates, hoping to catch a glimpse of the royal family. Security officers followed their usual routine. Gardeners quietly prepared the castle grounds. Everything looked perfectly normal, but inside the ancient stone walls, something felt different. Princess Anne stood alone inside a private drawing room. The mysterious envelope rested on a polished wooden table before her. She didn't touch it. Not immediately. Instead, she studied the handwriting. It seemed strangely familiar, not because she recognized the person who had written it, but because it reminded her of another time, another generation, another monarch. For several long moments, Anne remained completely still. Then her eyes noticed a short sentence written beneath the folded edge of the envelope. "Read this only when the family is together." Her expression changed instantly. This wasn't simply a private letter. Someone wanted every senior member of the royal family to hear the same message at the same moment. And that could only mean one thing: whatever waited inside was never meant to stay secret forever. Less than 30 minutes later, King Charles received an unexpected request. Princess Anne rarely asked for urgent meetings. In fact, she usually preferred solving problems quietly before anyone else even knew they existed. So when his private secretary informed him that Anne wished to see him immediately, Charles canceled his morning schedule without hesitation. Even his closest advisors looked surprised. "Your Majesty, should today's engagements be postponed?" Charles looked toward the castle gardens. Yes. No public appearances. And no press. Something told him that whatever Anne had discovered was far more important than another ceremonial event. Shortly before noon, Prince William and Catherine arrived at Windsor Castle. The atmosphere immediately felt unusual. Normally, Anne welcomed them with her familiar calm smile. Today, she barely spoke. William noticed it first. He quietly looked toward his father. "Has something happened?" Charles answered honestly. "I don't know, but your aunt believes we're about to find out." Catherine glanced toward the unopened envelope still resting on the table. Somehow, it seemed to dominate the entire room. No one could explain why. The old grandfather clock echoed through the drawing room. Every tick seemed louder than the last. Finally, Princess Anne reached forward. She carefully broke the wax seal. Inside rested only one handwritten page. No signature. No royal crest, nothing revealing who had written it. Anne began reading silently. After only a few lines, her breathing slowed. Halfway through the page, she quietly closed her eyes. By the time she reached the final sentence, the room felt even colder than before. William could no longer hide his curiosity. "What does it say?" Anne didn't answer. Instead, she folded the paper carefully and handed it to King Charles. "I think you should read it." Charles accepted the letter without speaking. As his eyes moved across each line, his expression slowly changed. Confusion, then surprise, then something almost no one had ever seen: regret. For nearly an entire minute, the king remained completely silent. Finally, Charles placed the letter back onto the table. "This isn't a request. It isn't advice." He looked toward William. "It's a question." Catherine leaned forward slightly. "What question?" Charles slowly looked around the room before answering. "Who deserves to protect the future of the crown when power alone is no longer enough?" No one replied, because deep inside, everyone already understood. The question wasn't about succession. It wasn't about titles, and it wasn't about who would one day wear the crown. It was asking something much more difficult. Who could truly be trusted? Princess Anne slowly stood beside the fireplace. For decades, I've watched this family through its happiest moments, and through its darkest. I've seen victories, I've seen mistakes, and I've witnessed conversations the public will never know. She paused before turning toward Catherine. One thing has always remained the same. When people leave a difficult conversation with Catherine, they almost always leave with hope. Catherine looked genuinely surprised. I've only tried to listen, Anne smiled softly. And perhaps that's exactly why this letter matters. King Charles slowly walked toward the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II. He stood silently before it, then spoke in a quiet voice. My mother once told me something. The strongest leader is rarely the loudest person in the room. It's the one who quietly keeps everyone together when nobody is watching. William lowered his head. Those words suddenly carried a meaning they had never carried before. Just as Charles prepared to continue, 3 sharp knocks echoed through the room. A palace messenger hurried inside. He looked unusually nervous. Your Majesty, I'm terribly sorry to interrupt, but palace security needs you immediately. Charles frowned. What happened? The messenger hesitated, then lowered his voice. A confidential document has disappeared from your private study. The room froze. William looked toward Anne. Anne looked toward the mysterious letter. Catherine quietly whispered, Was anything else taken? The messenger slowly shook his head. No, only that document. Charles stepped closer. It was locked away. How could someone take it? The messenger swallowed nervously. The security cameras stopped recording. Exactly 4 minutes before the file disappeared, silence filled Windsor Castle once again, because everyone understood what that meant. This wasn't an ordinary theft. Someone inside the palace had known about today's meeting. Someone had known about the mysterious letter, and someone was desperately trying to prevent the truth from ever being revealed. As dark clouds gathered above Windsor Castle, Princess Anne quietly looked toward the window. For the first time that morning, she wasn't afraid of the missing document. She was afraid of the person who had taken it, because whoever now possessed that confidential file also possessed the power to change the future of the royal family forever. Princess Anne's secret decision leaves King Charles speechless. What if? The hidden truth begins to surface. The drawing room remained silent. No one moved. No one dared to speak. The words inside the mysterious letter still echoed through everyone's mind. Who deserves to protect the future of the crown when power alone is no longer enough? But before anyone could discuss its meaning, the missing confidential document changed everything. King Charles immediately walked toward his private study. William, Catherine, and Princess Anne followed close behind. Outside the corridor, royal protection officers had already sealed the area. No palace employee was allowed to enter. Charles unlocked the heavy oak door himself. The room looked untouched. The books remained perfectly arranged. The curtains were still closed. The fireplace had long gone cold. At first glance, nothing appeared unusual, until William noticed one small detail. The top drawer of the king's desk was slightly open. Only a few centimeters, but enough to reveal that someone had been there. Charles slowly approached. Inside, the confidential file was gone. Only a single folded sheet remained. He carefully opened it. 6 handwritten words stared back at him. Some truths are safer when forgotten. A chill swept through the room. Catherine quietly whispered, This wasn't simple theft. It was a message. Princess Anne studied the handwriting carefully. For several moments, she said nothing. Then she quietly looked toward her brother. I've seen writing like this before. Charles frowned. When? Anne closed her eyes, searching through memories she hadn't revisited in years. It was during Mother's reign. William looked surprised. Queen Elizabeth? Anne nodded. She once received anonymous letters carrying almost identical handwriting. The spacing, the style, even the shape of certain letters. Charles remained silent. He remembered those letters. His mother had never revealed who sent them, nor had she ever allowed anyone else to read them. At the time, everyone believed they were nothing more than unusual correspondence. Now, they suddenly felt far more important. Without saying another word, Charles walked toward an old wooden cabinet hidden behind the library shelves. Very few people even knew it existed. He unlocked it with a small silver key. Inside rested dozens of carefully preserved journals, personal notes, family correspondence, and one small wooden box covered in dust. Princess Anne recognized it immediately. "I haven't seen that since Mother's final years." Charles gently lifted the lid. Inside rested several unopened envelopes. Each carried only a handwritten date. No signature, no seal. William looked confused. "What are they?" Charles answered quietly. "Letters sent to your grandmother. She read every one of them, but she never replied." Charles carefully removed the final envelope. Unlike the others, its seal had already been broken. He unfolded the fragile paper. The ink had faded with time, but the words remained clear. Princess Anne slowly began reading aloud. "The crown will never survive because of power alone. It will survive because one person chooses duty over ambition. When uncertainty arrives, trust the one who never asks for authority." The room became completely still. William slowly turned toward Catherine. She lowered her eyes. "I never wanted influence." Charles looked at her gently. "And perhaps that's exactly why you deserve it." Later that afternoon, William requested a private conversation with his father. Together they walked through the quiet gardens surrounding Windsor Castle. Neither spoke for several minutes. Finally, William broke the silence. "Father, if grandmother received these letters years ago, why did no one ever mention them?" Charles looked toward the ancient oak trees. "Because she believed some lessons couldn't be taught. They had to be discovered." William frowned. "And have we discovered them?" Charles smiled sadly. "I'm beginning to think we have." Inside the castle chapel, Catherine stood alone beneath the stained glass windows. The colorful light painted quiet patterns across the stone floor. She looked thoughtful, almost uncertain. Soft footsteps echoed behind her. Princess Anne entered quietly. "You've been hiding." Catherine smiled faintly. "I've been thinking." Anne waited patiently. Catherine finally admitted, "What if everyone believes I'm trying to change this family? What if they think I've accepted something that was never mine?" Anne gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "The people who seek power rarely question themselves. The people worthy of responsibility always do." For the first time since the mysterious letter arrived, Catherine allowed herself to smile, only slightly, but it was enough. As evening approached, another unexpected development shook Windsor Castle. A senior security officer hurried toward the family. "Your Majesty, we've recovered part of the deleted security records." Charles immediately turned. "What did you find?" The officer held up a small electronic access card. "It was hidden beneath your study desk." William examined it carefully. His expression changed instantly. "This belongs to someone inside the royal household." Charles looked shocked. "Whose card is it?" The officer hesitated. "The digital identity has been damaged. But one thing is certain. It wasn't used by an outsider." Princess Anne slowly crossed her arms. "So whoever entered your study already belonged inside these walls." The realization settled over everyone. This mystery was no longer about a missing document. It was no longer about anonymous letters. Someone trusted by the palace had betrayed that trust. Late that night, William returned to the security office alone. He carefully reviewed the palace's electronic access logs. Thousands of records appeared on the screen. Hours passed. Then suddenly, one timestamp caught his attention. The stolen document had been accessed exactly 4 minutes after another confidential file was opened. William enlarged the record. His heartbeat quickened. The second file wasn't about the missing document at all. It was about the anonymous letters Queen Elizabeth had received decades earlier. Someone hadn't simply stolen a report. They had been searching for the truth behind those mysterious messages. William quietly closed the computer. He looked through the rain-covered window toward the dark outline of Windsor Castle. For the first time, he understood that the greatest secret wasn't hidden inside the missing document. It was hidden somewhere in the palace's own history. And whoever had uncovered that secret first might already be one step ahead of the entire royal family. Princess Anne's secret decision leaves King Charles speechless. What if? The decision that changed everything night had fallen over Windsor Castle. Rain quietly tapped against the ancient windows. The palace corridors, once filled with conversations, had become strangely silent. Every member of the royal family understood one thing. The missing document was never the real mystery. The real mystery was why someone had risked everything to hide the truth. Just after midnight, the head of palace security entered King Charles's private study carrying a sealed folder. "Your Majesty, we've restored the final encrypted security records." Charles immediately stood. William, Catherine, and Princess Anne looked toward the folder. The officer slowly opened it. "We now know how the confidential file disappeared," William asked quietly. "And?" the officer continued. "The security system was never hacked. The access was authorized." Charles frowned. "Authorized by whom?" The officer looked around the room before answering. "An identity belonging to the royal household." William's heart sank, again. But this time, the complete report revealed something different. The authorization had been copied from an inactive palace database that hadn't been used in years. Someone had deliberately stolen an old digital identity, not to gain information, but to make another member of the family appear guilty. Princess Anne slowly nodded. "They wanted us to suspect one another." William quietly closed the report. And for a moment, it almost worked. As dawn approached, another discovery finally answered the question everyone had been asking. The anonymous letters received by Queen Elizabeth decades earlier had all been examined by handwriting specialists before being locked away. The experts had reached one surprising conclusion. The letters were intentionally written in a style that concealed the author's true identity. Charles smiled softly. "My mother never wanted us to discover who wrote them." Anne looked toward the portrait of Queen Elizabeth. "She wanted us to understand the message, not the messenger." Silence filled the room. For the first time, everyone understood. The mysterious letter delivered to Anne wasn't important because of who wrote it. It was important because it forced the family to ask themselves a question they had avoided for years. What truly makes a leader? Later that morning, King Charles invited the senior members of the royal family into the grand drawing room. No advisors attended. No cameras were allowed. No officials stood nearby. Only family. Charles slowly walked toward the center of the room. "I've spent my life believing that protecting the crown meant protecting tradition." He paused. "But recent events have reminded me of something far more important. The crown survives only when the people beneath it trust one another." He turned toward Princess Anne. "You have spent your entire life serving without asking for recognition." Then he faced William. "You searched for truth instead of choosing blame." Finally, he looked toward Catherine. "You reminded us that real leadership is earned through humility, not ambition." Catherine lowered her eyes. "I've only tried to do my duty." Charles smiled. "And that is precisely why people trust you." Princess Anne slowly stepped forward. For a moment, no one spoke. Then she quietly unfolded the mysterious letter one final time. "I believe this letter has already accomplished its purpose." William looked surprised. "What do you mean?" Anne smiled gently. "It was never sent to change the future. It was sent to reveal it." She looked around the room. "Every one of us had a choice. We could allow suspicion to divide this family, or allow trust to unite it." Charles slowly nodded. "And today, we made the right choice." That afternoon, Buckingham Palace released a brief statement. No accusations. No dramatic announcements. No mention of missing files or anonymous letters. Instead, the statement simply confirmed that the royal family remained united in its commitment to public service. Hours later, King Charles, Queen Camilla, Prince William, Princess Catherine, and Princess Anne appeared together before the public. The photographers expected tension. Instead, they witnessed something entirely different. William walked beside Catherine. Charles smiled warmly toward Anne. Camilla greeted the waiting crowds with quiet dignity. For just a few seconds, the cameras captured an image that quickly spread across the world. Not because of power, not because of titles, but because it showed a family choosing unity over division. As the crowd slowly disappeared, Charles and Anne stood together overlooking the Windsor Gardens. The evening sun broke through the clouds. For several moments, neither spoke. Finally, Charles smiled. "When Mother received those anonymous letters, I thought they were simply advice." Anne looked toward the castle grounds. "They were never advice. They were reminders." Charles nodded. "Reminders that no crown survives because of gold. It survives because people choose loyalty." Anne quietly answered, "And because someone is always willing to place duty above themselves." The king looked toward William and Catherine walking together through the gardens. "I believe our family's future is safe." Anne smiled. So do I. The bells of Windsor Castle echoed softly across the evening sky. The mysterious letter had never revealed a hidden heir. It had never been about replacing anyone. It had never been about power. Its true purpose had been much greater. It reminded the royal family that trust cannot be inherited, it must be earned. And in the end, that became the greatest lesson of all. Closing narration. Some stories are remembered because of crowns, others because of power. But the greatest stories remind us that leadership begins with humility, grows through service, and survives because of trust. This was a fictional what-if story created for entertainment. It is not based on real events or verified royal decisions. If you enjoyed this cinematic royal story, share your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done if you were King Charles? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for royal blames so you never miss our next royal documentary-style story. Until next time, thank you for watching.